He dropped down the street. Your problem. They selling them things 50 years ago.
Ancestors' rifles, baby. No.
He's speaking right here. Yeah. You want to sit right there? Yeah. Yeah, we'll go get more chairs. Yeah, go ahead and sit there. We'll get more.
Right behind you.
You can put those two right there. Charlie, here's a couple here. Charlie, here's one over there. You got your hat on. Well, you got one saved. All right, you're way ahead. All right, come on in, folks. Okay, we're going to get this talk started. This is annual meeting and presentation of the Harrison County Historical Society. Tim is the trustee of the society. He has an interest in local gun makers. And hopefully you'll have an interest in local gun makers. He's amassed quite a collection here today. So, are you ready?
I'm ready, yeah.
You want me to turn this for you?
No. Well, really, thank everyone for coming out. First of all, I want to know where did you guys park? Of all places, right? You know, everybody doesn't want to put gas, they want to park. Well, I'm glad you showed up. I am very excited. Just looking around the size of the thing here and the rifles that we have in place here. I don't know if you really understand the enormity of what's out here. We have 14 Ager rifles. We have one Moses Wright rifle, 4 Lemuel Johnson rifles, 1 Joel Johnson rifle, and 3 Ryder rifles. 23 rifles, almost 24 rifles in one place in modern times in Caddis of ancient rifles. This is really incredible. It's more incredible than what I'm going to talk about. You know, it's not going to be all too exciting. I'm going to hit a little bit on just about all the different makers. Talk maybe point out the ones that not so renowned. These the 4 major ones we have right here. They are probably the most prolific ones in Harrison County, and you can pretty much tell that just by the amount we have here, especially the Agers. And then we'll find a lot of these guns. Some of them have been handed down through families. A lot of them are belong to collectors. A lot of them are families who went out and, descendants of the makers that went out and found them and got them, and got a hold of them so they could have a piece of their own family history. I'm more not an expert on these rifles. I'm more of a fan. I'm just fascinated with them. Ever since I was a little kid, we would go up to my great aunt's house out here on North Main Street in Caddis. And she was kind of like one of our babysitters. When I was about 6, 8 years old or so, we would go out, maybe stay the night, stay the weekend or whatever. She had a fantastic old big house, a lot of places to explore, a lot of outbuildings to go explore in, where she had all family stuff just kind of gathered up there. In my room, what I usually slept in, it had the scary door that goes up in the attic. And you're a little kid, you're going to go up in the attic, right? We all did. And we had 3 rifles up there too. And one of them is over here. I still have one at home. The 3rd one evidently made its way to a cousin out in California. It wasn't supposed to, but it did. But so those rifles belong to our great-great-grandfather Joseph, who lived out on the outside of Caddis, out by Columbus Equipments, where the homestead is now. He had that rifle that I brought here is a Ryder rifle, and I will talk more about it later. But I'm going to just start off and get into the gun makers we did have here in the county. They're about 23. Now these are stats that are listed with the Association of Ohio Long Rifle Collectors. Bob Poe, Bob, you can raise your hand back in the back. Bob was past president of it, and he had a lot. If you want to speak to somebody knowledgeable on probably any of the rifles out here, that is the man to speak to. Very knowledgeable. He has his own collection. Been trying to, since first of the year, trying to buy a Johnson off him. No, and I wanted Johnson because he is the one that he has would be my 3rd great-grandfather's nephew made that rifle. So, that'd be one nice to be able to get a hold of. But Bob's not going to let it go. He knows what he has. Let's start out with we'll start off with Alexander Ager. It makes it easier because it's alphabetical order. And he would fall right up there in the top of it. That's the most guns that we do have here today. Near Rumley, he lived from 1821 to 1898. I will go probably more into detail as I go through on him. Next is William Arnold in Caddis. He lived from 1798 to 1874. He was a justice of peace here in Caddis for 33 years. he's one of those ones that, you know, he's listed as a gun maker, but you don't see any of his guns. Now, is it because he didn't put his name on it? I don't know. Is it because they just got used? They got used, and you know, these black powder, if you didn't take care of them, they would corrode so bad. And you could take a look at some of them. You see the damage right around where the percussion cap goes off on them. And if you didn't clean them, you took these things out and shoot them. I shoot the one we have. Me and my brothers, my son, we shoot that rifle. And it's like you shoot it 2 times and you clean it really good, because the black powder is terrible on these things. The percussion caps are terrible on them. They will damage them. And if it's left unattended, that black powder will be so corrosive in there, it will destroy the whole back end of the rifle. So, it was that fly. You don't see those rifles around. George Barnhart, another person from New Rumley. And he was there between 44 and 1881. They listed him as a gunsmith. Now, I pulled out the 1875 Atlas of Harrison County, and when you go to New Rumley and you look at there, they did not list any gunsmiths. They didn't list Ager. You know, and all the businessmen there, none of them were listed. So, but I have not seen any Barnharts or any pictures of any Barnharts. Now, Samuel DeVore, also in New Rumley, he was one of Alexander Ager's associates. And I'll talk about him more later also. George Fisher. Now, George Fisher in Archer Township, listed as a gunsmith in 1819, but he died in 1821. You know, so the question is, you know, is there any Fisher guns out there? Maybe you all might know on any of these other ones where these guns might be. They made their way out to somewhere. Joseph Hopes, Harrison County, he worked as a gunsmith, and then he moved on. He settled on in Morgan County. Do you know anything more about? Do you have rifles? Anything on that? Okay. Another one of those ones. Nathan Jarvis, Minksville, Freeport. He was working in Freeport, but he settled out at Sewellsville. So I don't know if he has any Guernsey County rifles in his name out there or not. Do you think, Bob? Or
I have one, but I wouldn't know what county it was made in.
okay,
It's in both counties. So
okay, that's
I looked
true.
at the Belmont.
That's true. What did he make? You don't know? They're doing Abiram Johnson. Now, I see when you look at old newsletters and that, he's referred to him as Abram. I was corrected, my cousin back in the corner there, on how to pronounce that name. Her son, his name Abiram. Abiram, Chris. He likes to be called Chris. So she's corrected me on that. We'll talk more about the Johnsons, but he was a blacksmith, silversmith, gunsmith, and his sons got into it. Lemuel and Joel, and Lemuel's son James Johnson. And you'll see some L.L. Johnson and Son rifles that we do have here. J.P. Laird of Bowerston. One year he's director. He was listed as a gunsmith. No guns. I haven't seen any pictures of any of the guns from them. John Martin of Freeport Township. That's going to be interesting how we'll blend him in with the Wright family a little bit later. Robert Maxwell, Archer Township. When George Fisher passed away, evidently he purchased a lot of the tools and stuff. Not a lot, but he purchased some of them from the George Fisher estate. But and again, no rifles I know of. Not saying they don't exist. We don't never see any pictures of them or have any on hand. Peter Reed and Germano. Now this was interesting because he manufactured cut and smooth rifle. He employed 2 people. This guy had to have made a lot of rifles. He had to. He had 2 employees there. And back in the day, Germano was a big town. I mean, 3 churches, a school, it had numerous merchants there. Germano was very large. So not being able to have or see a Reed rifle and sounding like, you know, the type of businesses he had there, Either he didn't mark them, or it just had just gone off into the woodwork somewhere. Charles Wright, Caddis. Yeah, he was probably one of the early ones. So highly doubtful that he probably even put his name on a rifle. And War of 1812, don't know how many he made, but there's another rifle that you don't hear anything of. John G. Ryder, right here in Caddis. His shop was right over here down past Napa, and down there on the corner of the road where you turn to go up to the Legion. Right there, that corner lot there, that was the Ryder lot in Caddis. I remember there being a mobile home on there. You know, tell them what was there before, how it's been through on that property over the years. But that's where his gun shop was. Eli Roser, Rumley Township, another associate of Alexander Ager's. I'll cover him a little bit more when we get into the Ager rifles. John West of Harrisville, 1 year in 1850 census, he was listed as a blacksmith. No rifles that I know of that we have of his either. And then we have the Wright family. We have one Wright rifle here. Charlie Baldwin from Freeport. He managed to pick it up. We know another one in the Bushkirch family. In all families. They have which one is it? Is it do you know which one it is? Is it a Moses or William?
I think it's a Moses.
It is a Moses.
Yeah, it's a Moses.
Okay. Of course, Moses Wright was the elder of the family. His son Benjamin and William, and Newton Wright was William Wright's son. So they all got into the family trade. Find the right button.
Down arrow should be.
Alexander Ager. 14 rifles, Alexander Ager. And I'd like to thank everybody for bringing those rifles in. Kevin hiding that? Kevin is a huge collector. Of course, he is a descendant of the Ager family. And we have other descendants of the Ager family. If you're a descendant of the Ager family, then make sure you raise your hand. So we do have a few of those here. And thank you very much for coming. And Alexander Ager, probably one of the most prolific rifle makers here as far as being able to find these rifles. Can we find so many because they were well built or they were just well taken care of? But he did make a lot of guns. He was born in 10th of July, 1821, died in October of 1898. He was a teacher, a musician, gunsmith. Back in if you ever look through the Eckley Perry books, they give a history on some of the prominent citizens of Harrison County at the time. And they listed him as being born in Montgomery County in 1821. He taught district school for a time. He was a talented musician, and he taught music. But his real trade and occupation was that of a gunsmith, a work in which he excelled. Many rifles of his maker are still in use. And a note about Alexander Ager, that a few days before the capture of Morgan Raider here in Salem, Ohio, him and some of his neighbors started out with their squirrel rifles to assist in the capture. If you notice all these rifles around here, they're small caliber. They're 32, 36 caliber. You know, these rifles were made for shooting squirrels, shooting rabbits, taking care of pests such as crows, hawks, owls. You know, they weren't made. We didn't have a lot of white-tailed deer running around here back in the day. Maybe some turkeys. They could shoot some turkeys, but they're small caliber rifles, and they're very, very accurate. His shop opened up in New Rumley in 1848, and he has a day book. And Kevin has a copy of his day book over here. He kept track of everything. Everything he made. He did everything for the people in New Rumley and whoever traveled up there to see him to fix things. He's known repairing anything that needed repair in the community. All right, Scott.
There you
we
go. Hit the right
This
button.
is a copy of some of the stuff on this day book. If you get a chance to look at the one that Kevin over here, it's fantastic. It was done really well, really copied off of it a lot better than some of the writing. These are some hard copies of that taken out of one of our newsletters. You see up on our W.H. Gressinger. Gressinger and New Rumley, they were listed in 1875 as shoemakers. So Ager did a lot of work for him because he lists him quite a few times throughout his planner. Well, now it's going to get sensitive, huh? And as I said, he made a half-stock rifle gun. It was $15. $15 for a half-stock rifle gun. Some of them, he had different prices on some of them. There's one for $13 for John Knopf. And there was another one up here. I think it got $18 one for Kale, MV Kale. This is 1863 he was making these. Like I said, then they do something as where do you see here? Fix the stovepipe. He has soldering to a stovepipe. Put a ramrod in the gun. He fixed some match planes and a saw handle. So he did all sorts of things. He old plates for Emma. So he was a pretty resilient guy. Did a lot of different things while he was there. He had two associates, and a lot of this information that I get out of here have come from the Charles Hanna books, the Eckley Perry books, but most of it comes from the Association of Ohio Long Rifle Collectors. They've been putting out newsletters for years. How long has the association been around, Bob?
Mid-70s,
That's 70s.
mid-70s.
If you ever get a chance, the first weekend in April, down at Marietta, what's the hotel's name down there? The Lafayette. Real fancy hotel right there on the river. They have their association meeting there every first weekend in April. Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Friday is mostly for association members to come in, do association business, have a dinner, and that. Then they're open with displays of all their rifles, and on Saturday and on Sunday. And you will see them for all over the state of Ohio, or where they could bring them in. Eli Roser is one of Alexander Ager's associate. In the 1850 census, he was listed as being in the same household as Ager. But that same year, he died. So he probably, with Ager only opening shop in 48, and Roser dying in 50, whether he worked for him both of those 2 years, I don't know. But in the estate sale of Eli Roser's stuff, Ager purchased some of these tools. Mostly he purchased some curly maple for stocks. But one thing that Eli Roser sold in his estate was gun stocks. He had really over 200 gun stocks that were sold in different lots to different people. And I don't know, I forget the name of there was one majority guy that bought these. He wasn't a Harrison County gun maker. Could have been Jefferson County, or one of those local counties. But I don't know. Alexander must have had to get busy making gun stocks after that, because a lot of them went away.
I want to let people know that Alexander is buried in the New Rumley UB church where I went when I was a kid.
Right there behind the church.
Yeah, and I've got pictures of the tombstone and everything. I just thought that would be interesting.
Yeah.
Stay local.
His gun shop was on the other end of town. If you're familiar with New Rumley, when you drive in New Rumley, say you're coming from Germain over Jewett, and you go to that big sharp curve right there, and they have the township hall right there on the curve. if you take that little road out and you make a hook down to the left, goes past the Burkhart residence, I think, now, Newbro owns, Kenny Newbro owns some of Ager's property. If you go down in big old deep hollow there, I just drove it the other day, it's not a very well-maintained road, but it's a real deep hollow, and Ager's property was back in there. And if you see some of the stuff that Kevin has on display here, Leroy Van Horn, he was the total historian for New Romney. And he went back there, what year do you think it was he went back there?
It was in the eighties.
Back in the 1980s. He went back there with a metal detector, probably the best technology they had for 1980s, metal detecting wise for Harrison County. And he went over, he knew where the gun shop was located. And he went through there, and some of the stuff he found, Kevin has on display over here. Samuel DeVore was another one of Ager's partner, but he was only a partner for about 6 years, from 85 to 61. And the business was listed as Ager DeVore, and there was rifles marked S.R. DeVore, and some of them are marked A. Ager and Company. And you'll see Kevin, how many of you got marked A. Ager and Company? 3 of them. So Kevin has some of those rifles over there. Some examples of Alexander Ager's work. I've seen someone, even Kevin has some here. Magnificent silver work in them. Beautiful rifles. Now I marked this one as Eli Roser. It's in the book, and I'm looking at it, and it talks about being Ager, but that looks like Roser. Name Ager. Mostly on Ager's rifles, the G in Ager would drop down on the other flat stock of the barrel below the top of the barrel. And this one looks like a Eli Roser, and looks like it says Eli Roser and Company. And Samuel DeVore. Very few that are named as Samuel DeVore, most of them A. Ager and Company. All right, let's move on to John Ryder. Ryder's here, a local Caddis gun maker. This is one of his rifles. This is my brother John here. This is one of the rifles we used to play with when we were kids. We'd sneak up into the attic. This is a J.G. Ryder rifle. One thing about this that I found out after got it, cleaned it up, and it might look nice and shiny, and I know some collectors out there might kind of frown on that or whatever, but it's our rifle. We cleaned it up. I think great-grandpa would like to have it looking halfway decent, but it's numbered underneath this lock plate here. This one is. I wish I would have got a chance to. I forgot my key to the Historical Society. I would have went up there and grabbed the one up there. The Historical Society has a Ryder rifle also. And it is a different type. You see all the different styles here. This is a cap box. It's made for holding percussion caps, but most of the time, and Bob will attest to that, never found a cap in one, did you, Bob? Always patches in there. And you'll see the ones with the long rectangular shape. Now that's called patch box, and those are more or less more often found to be the earlier rifles of the builder. That was a style that they had then. And then they went to the cap boxes in the later years. As I said, underneath this, I'll show a picture of it here on the thing, but underneath this lock plate, and also on the lock bolt that holds this whole thing in place, he stenciled, or he imprinted numbers. This one here is numbered 105. It is marked with a Roman numeral LLV, and right beside it on the wooden part of it, it has 105 also stamped into it. And on the lock bolt, when you pull it out, it has LLV on the lock bolt also. So I don't know how many makers have done that, because I know there's not a lot of people that will pull these rifles apart. So I might be the exception if I found that. And the one that we have at the Historical Society, It has the long rectangular type patch box on it, and it is numbered 38. In Roman numerals, 38. XXXV111. But there's no lock bolt for that. It was who was it donated by, Scott?
Some anonymous guy from California mailed it to us.
Mailed it to us. Really beautiful
Just
rifle.
like 5 years ago. He just called up and said, "Want to know if we wanted it," and he mailed it to us.
Fantastic. It's kind of rough, you know. Like most of, you know, when you're talking rifles that are 150 plus years old, you know, it's seen better time. But it's missing a couple pieces: the lock bolt to hold the lock plate in, the little what is that on the back side, the brass piece right there by the lock bolt?
Just a big inlay.
Is it what is it?
It's an inlay.
Yeah,
It's just
the
an
inlay,
inlay
yeah.
there.
Yeah.
And it's missing that piece too. But other than that, the rifle's pretty well complete, except the ramrod. Most of the rifles you'll see don't have that ramrod. They get broken and they're replaced all the time. But the Ryder Gun Shop, right down the road here, I read a obituary up at the Historical and Genealogy Society, and it was John Ryder's brother passed away. And whoever wrote it, you know, how they, in the old days, they would write these just flowing obituaries and that. And they rambled on how they used to, when they were kids, they remember walking by the gun shop on the way to school. Now, I don't know when that picture was taken. Probably about the time it was about ready to fall down.
Whereabouts was it?
Or the city of Caddis, village of Caddis is getting ready to condemn them.
That's going up Charleston Street. On the left-hand side
No,
of
not Charleston.
No?
Buffalo. Buffalo Street, right between Caddis and the gas station, dropping down the hill, and then you turn up the alley.
Oh, it goes up that alley.
Right that corner right there.
Okay.
On the 1875 map of Caddis, that has the Ryder property.
So most of those were taken by Ron Shine in the 20s.
Was it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, so the gun shop evidently by the time this picture was taken seemed much better times. Some examples of Ryders. He had a very distinct script on his. Started in 1850, listed as a resident of Caddis. 53, he's listed as a gunsmith. 60, he was 44 years old, listed as a master gunsmith. 1870, had $100 invested in his business, employed one hand. So we know he was pumping out some rifles. 1878 to 1896, he must have been demoted. He was only listed as a gunsmith.
So he was buying parts and assembling them.
Yes,
at
a lot
that
of
point.
you look at on these things, you can see them. I see Pat Penning. Mine on over there says Dayton. Bob pointed out that the trigger mechanism and the trigger guard, it was a Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania made. What would happen on a lot of these guns? But now, when you look at the Ager stuff, Ager made some of this stuff, but you see the molds for the hammers, you see the molds for the lock plates, and that Ager was making the inlays and everything. About the only thing they really didn't make was the barrels. But Ager had a barrel drilling machine. If you ever seen one of these things, it takes up about this, probably more than those 3 tables over there. So if you can imagine the length of these rifles, sitting that barrel on, clamped down, and then having all the apparatus out there to drill into that hunk of steel, make that. So the barrels was another one of the things that they would buy. A lot of the work that the gunsmiths did by themselves was in the wood. They would start out with a big, huge rectangular piece of curly maple, and they would start whittling it down. And these things were like that thick. You know, these were big. They were big pieces. So they did a lot of work to get those wood stocks into place, and then to fit all those pieces in them. I'm sure they had some sort of a pattern or device or something where they would put it in there and mark out to where they would have to carve out areas to put the lock plate in, to put the hammers, the trigger assemblies and stuff in. See, his rifles were engraved J.G. Ryder, and some of them had J.G. Ryder, Caddis, Ohio. And as I was telling you about the other one thing about it is he would stamp his rifles. Here's the inside of that rifle right over there, and you can see the LLV in 105, and also on the lock bolt has an LLV in it. This is the Ryder rifle that we have at the Historical Society, and you can see the XXXV111 number 38. I don't know how many he made. I think he's made at least 105. Yeah, you don't. People don't like you to pull their rifles apart. It's very understandable. Now the Johnson family, and I just had all the ancestors. Johnson family in Nottingham Township. If you're familiar with County Road 1, Brushy Fork Road, where's Keith at? I'm sure Keith is. Yeah, he knows. The Johnson homestead. Benjamin Johnson moved here in 1810. This says he was 1806. You know, you look at a lot of different things. The Eckley and Perry looks say 1810, and I think I'm going to go with more like 1810 on the age of Abiram Johnson. But Benjamin Johnson, the elder of the family, moved here 1810. He was a Revolutionary War soldier. He's buried in Pew Cemetery. He got land because he was a Revolutionary War soldier. So, you know, come to Ohio and get your land, and he did. And he staked out a big portion of land down. And as you're going down there and you go through the real wide valley, go past Minksville Cemetery, Minksville Church, continuing on down toward the backwaters, you'll see the farm there, right before you go up over the hill. Big farm. My mom and dad were married at that farm. Like I said, my great-great-grandfather was a minister, the Reverend Ben Johnson. He would be Albiram's nephew. But the elder Johnson came here in 1910. Abiram Johnson, he was born in Maryland, and in 1792, so he was 8 years old when his folks picked up and moved to here. Now, at that time, there was a notification in the local paper around there for an apprentice to work for one of the local gunsmiths. And I believe that he probably went there and apprenticed with him and seen as his dad, and then left here. He stayed there for another 4 years learning the apprenticeship. He moved here in 1814. And the reason they think that he's thought to have apprenticed back in Bedford County, Pennsylvania, was the fact that a lot of his early work on the engraving style is the same style of the Bedford County, Pennsylvania gun makers. So he noticed a lot of that in his patchbox work and his inlays that he did. Very, very similar to what was going on back in Bedford County. So that's why I believe he settled back there. Well, he moved into housing adjacent to his father there. I don't know. You know, I look back at some of the maps, and some of them will give you structures and whatever on there, and I'm sure Benjamin Johnson, you know, he had a pretty full house. And Abiram came with his wife. No, I'm sorry, he wasn't married yet. He didn't marry until later. But he didn't live in the same house, but he lived in the adjacent area there. Then when he did get married, it was 1820, he had two sons, Joel and Lemuel. And Joel lived in the same area right there. He lived a little bit farther, I want to say it was up Minksville Road, up over in that area there. And Lemuel lived in Deersville. Lemuel lived in Deersville. Joel lived down in Minksville. I don't know if I want to throw this in or not, but great-great-grandfather married into the Johnson family. And his property down there, he was a cook. Their property is down there on Macefield Road. And there's an old blacksmith shop there on the property. And there's a forge in that blacksmith shop. And we kind of think that, seeing there was no forge over, man, I lost you now. Oh, there, I'm sorry. Holly, was there a blacksmith shop on the Benjamin Johnson property, on your property?
Not that I know of.
Not you know. I don't know of any buildings there. She's the seventh generation to live in that. No, it's the sixth generation.
I'm the seventh.
It's the seventh to live on that farm. It's been in the family all those years. I think that because the mule, or Abiram, lived adjacent to Benjamin, that he might have had that property up through there. I haven't been able to go back through the tax records to see if he was on that or not. But that, we do know that blacksmith shop has been there since the early 1800s. And possibly, they could have been making rifles there. The mules, I mean, you got,
Copeland was, the Copeland, it's a Cope because they married the Copes.
they married a coat. Okay.
It was originally a Johnson Land.
It was originally Johnson Land. That's what I was figuring, because how adjacent, how close it is right there.
It was 2 quarter sections, one right next to each other.
So it's a good chance that forge that exists there today was the forge that the Johnson rifles were being made out of. Abiram Johnson, this is a box lock rifle, box lock.
Dated.
You see the different style, you don't see any of those styles here. This is a pretty early percussion type rifle, and kind of a rare rifle. Johnson was very elaborate. Abiram's grandfather was a silversmith. Griffith Johnson, Captain Griffith Johnson was a silversmith. And whether Abiram, when he tagged back stayed back at Pennsylvania when his father came here, whether he, kind of learned anything like that from his grandfather, I don't know. But he has a lot of, and when you see the Johnson rifles, they're very elaborate, or the Abiram Johnson rifles, they're very elaborate. They do have a lot of silver in them, and if you notice, here's what I was talking about. This specifically, this area right here on this patch box, that circle with the diagonal lines and stuff through it is very Bedford County, Pennsylvania style of doing that. This is 1833. Another one from Abiram Johnson. Beautiful work. You see the scroll work here on the patch box also. A lot of gorgeous inlays. Now get to the Wrights. I want to start off on the Wrights by reading a letter or an article that was posted in the Freeport Press, 29 March of 1934. It was titled "My Grandfather's Gun Shop." This was by Moses's grandson, not to William or Benjamin, but to his other son Thomas. In the article says, "My great-grandfather Nathan Wright was born in Virginia, September, and he went on through Nathan and coming here, and Moses Worry married Hannah Worley in Coleraine Township, Bedford County, PA. My grandfather Moses was the 4th child. Moses Wright was born October 5th, 1792. Anna Larkin, his wife, was born August 24th, 1792. Thomas, my father, their first child, was born in 1815. In 1817, they moved from Pennsylvania to a large farm 2 miles west of Freeport, Ohio. Here he erected a cabin, a 1-story gun shop, and he planted an orchard. The shop had a forge, hand bellows, and anvil. He made workbenches, tool racks, and nearly all tools he used. He made gun barrels and did much repairing. Almost every rural householder had one of Mr. Wright's rifles and reaping sickles. When after I knew him, he made no kind of guns except rifles. He made bullet molds in size 60, 80, and 100, meaning round bullets. 60 meant that many bullets to a pound of lead. Most of the rifles ran 80 to 100. 80 to 100. I don't know. I'm going to say because the rifles that you see here are like 32s and 36s. So that would mean 100 would probably be a 32 caliber. They didn't gauge them in calibers back there. They gauged them by how many bullets they could get out of a pound of lead. So probably 100 being a 32 and 80 being a 36. Most game were squirrels and rabbits. Black squirrels were quite common. They got black squirrels over in Freeport now. Charlie, you see them?
I've heard a couple people seeing them here right
Yeah, they're making a comeback.
Are they?
They are, yeah.
now. I've heard somebody over there.
Yeah.
They sure are.
Black squirrels were quite common. Hawks, owls, and crows were common farm enemies. As most cutlery was imported from Sheffield, England, it was expensive. My grandfather made table knives and 2-tined forks, scissors, razors, spade shovels, mags, chopping axes, broad axes, froes for splitting, blocks for shingles, and drawing knives and shaving them. He did not charge for pulling teeth, and he did quick work of that. The joints were covered with gun stocks in the rough. Most were curly maple, beautiful when finished. The stock extended to the muzzle end of the barrel. A cavity in the breech was covered by a brass spring joint, in which was tallow and bullet patches. On the top of the barrel near the hind sight was engraved the name M. Wright. In testing a rifle, he would give me a patch about 1/2 inch square and a carpet tack to fasten to a block with a blackened face. He would stand in the shop door and shoot. I would mark the place with a white stick. He would generally cut the patch, and the gun was not considered true until he drove the tack into the block. One day, 3 men, nearly dark as Indians from exposure, came into the shop. Granddad shook hands with them and gave them a hearty welcome. They were trappers from the upper waters of the Missouri River, where they had spent the winter getting furs and trading with the Indians for their furs. In the early spring, they would make a raft, pack their furs and other pelts, float down the Missouri to St. Louis, where they sold the furs for cash, silver and gold. Bringing their boat down to Cairo and then up the Ohio River to Wheeling, where they would debark and trudge to Freeport and get rooms at the tavern. After breakfast, they came to the gun shop to get their guns repaired and order 5 more new guns. They were profitable customers and paid cash. I would listen with open eye, mouth, and ears to their relating of killing bears, panthers, and fights with other dangerous animals. They would leave in the fall to get back to another winter's hunts. They would get supplies that the Indians needed. It was a delight for me to spend a week or 2 with Grandpa. I felt free to ask questions which he encouraged, and when possible would answer the understanding of a child's intellect. I once saw a large red spot on the shop door. I asked what made it. Oh, he replied, one morning I shot a bear up the ravine and dragged it to the shop. Took the door off its wooden hinges, laid it on the ground, and skinned and dressed the bear on the door. That's bear blood. On rainy and disagreeable days, the gun shop was a rendezvous for young men of the community and the boys to joke, banter, and willing exchange of repartee. But they were careful not to bother Moses Wright or get in his way. He made a beautiful picture in his usual habit of after eating his supper, he would take some bread out in front under an apple tree and sit down, and little brown sparrows would swarm down almost cover him while he fed them crumbs. That was before the introduction of English sparrows and Norway rats. Only 2 of his sons, Benjamin and William, learned the gun-making trade. In 1828, Moses had built a buried log house on a steep hill at the side of his orchard. There were 3 stories facing south and 2 facing north. Whoever conceives such a structure does not deserve a monument nor a medal for architecture. And I'll show you a picture of that house. In early 2000 or so, the association did a story on Moses Wright homestead and the rifles. One of the local guys, Mike Puskowitz, had been out in Iowa, I believe, for something, and he came upon an auction, and there was a Moses Wright rifle being auctioned. And he got to talking with the guy that eventually got it and ended up bringing it back to Freeport for some things. And I think eventually he bought it. He bought it off the guy. But it's kind of funny when you think that he was all the way out in Iowa and he found a Freeport, Ohio rifle. Just goes to show you, I was looking back in my family history, and a great-great-grandfather, great-great-great-grandfather, they had at least 10 kids, at least half girls, half guys. And I noticed that a lot of the ones when they married, they moved to Iowa, in the middle to late 1800s. I don't know if there was jobs or what it was out there, but I know a lot of my family moved out that way. So it could be a lot of residents of Harrison County, a lot of, I don't know, maybe they saw what Harrison County is going to be like in the year 2000 or something. They decided, well, get out of here while they're going good or something. But anyway, there must have been a lot of Harrison County residents that went to Iowa. As I said, the association did that newsletter on it, and it had showed some pictures of the homestead and that. And if you're familiar with Freeport, and you go out past the mine, and you continue on down there, where's Dave go? Dave, I went out there to look at it here a couple weeks ago to find it, and who I find wandering down the road with Dave Coe out from the Daily Water. And I asked him where it was. He says, "Oh, it's down here. Do you want me to take you to it?" I said, "Sure. You know, better than me trying to wander around and find it. Take me right to it." So we had quite a walk up around the property and that, and it's not the same as it was when the newsletter did their article on it back 23 years earlier. This is a picture of it as it comes from the article. Here's this beautiful architectural house that Moses Wright built, and the gun shop was located right here. By the time this was done, the gun shop was long gone. It wasn't there anymore. And I got 2020. No, they weren't taken in 2020. They were taken in like 2000. It's about 2 miles out west from there. And this is where the Sugar family. Glenn Sugar, was that who owned it? Yeah. Glenn Sugar owned it at that time. And they raised sheep. So, he kept the ground pretty good. Pretty nice there. This is the cemetery where Moses Wright is buried. That is a single remaining stone is there. What happened, Charlie? What happened to the stones? They got stolen. They would come back and steal headstones out of the cemetery, but this one is still standing.
Too heavy to steal.
Pardon?
Too heavy to steal.
Yeah. About that. And one thing is that you can't see in this picture, but I noticed while I was out there, is there are sandstone pillars with holes in the top of cable. So at one time they had some sort of a fence made up around protecting the cemetery. But still, that is the only one there. But now, this large building you see here in the back, that is the only structure standing out there today. They're all gone. The house is gone, and you wouldn't recognize it the same place, but unless you were standing up here on the hill looking down there, you can see this is, was that Crab Orchard Road? Crab Orchard Road. It turns there and goes out that way. The grass has grown up. It's like 6 feet high. If there hadn't been a trail where somebody drove through there earlier, we wouldn't be able to walk through there without going through. I was still picking burrs off of my jacket when I got back home. But it's not the same place now as it was back then. William Wright, one of Moses' sons, listed as a gunsmith in the 1860s and 1890 tax listings. In 1854, when his father died, he purchased his gunsmith tools and other items from his state auction. And we have examples of William Wright. Well, the example we have of William Wright is like just the barrel of it.
Benjamin.
What's that?
The barrel of Benjamin.
Yeah.
His brother.
And so they're decorated inside William Henry Wright or W. Wright. This is William Wright's gun shop in Freeport. When was this taken, do you think, Charlie? How long did it stand?
Well, that was
Port Theater was built,
Okay.
Bendora built the Port Theater, it sits right where that house.
Port Theater was
stood.
there. No, this is his house in Freeport that he built his guns at.
80, 85 years ago.
Okay. Then Benjamin Wright, son of Moses Wright, also listed as gunsmith in the 1850 tax lesson. According to his great-granddaughter, he was a doctor as well as a gunsmith, so he had a second job. And John Martin, who I noted there earlier, and up on the second slide, he was 20 years old, and he was listed as a member of the household, so more than likely he was one of Benjamin Wright's apprentices. But it didn't list how, it didn't list any more after the 1850 census. An example of Moses Wright's work.
Nope, you're going the
No,
wrong
I'm going
direction.
the wrong way here.
You are going the wrong way. There you go.
There we go. 1828.
Wow. Oh, it's got a fish on it.
Now you see these, you see right here that we've got one flintlock, our rifle, I believe it's an Ager flintlock. 1823, over in Europe, the percussion cap came into being. It made it to the United States about 1825, so most of the rifles you're going to see that are all percussion rifles are after 1825. They did make flintlocks. You know, people still drive today, people still drive manual shift cars, they just love them, you know, so people love flintlocks still then. So they still made the flintlocks, but mostly it was all percussion rifles after that. William Henry Wright, here's some examples of his work. And as Bob was pointing out to me earlier, right around here, you see, when you look at some of these rifles you got here, you'll see how damaged, when the hammer comes down on a percussion cap, what is that, calcium chloride that was in there, that is part of the stuff in there that helps ignite that. That would just do so much damage. A lot of the gunsmiths would make plates out in front of there to protect that. So you see some of these here, they just have the regular lock plate in it, and there's no protection on there, but some of them they did put the protection in there. Here's a product of Benjamin Wright's. You see, he did a lot of excessive stuff on there, put a lot of inlays. I guess, you know, he did that in a time when he wasn't doctoring. But that pretty much concludes my presentation. We do have, like I said, we've got 23 rifles here. So if you could please take the time and check this out, because I don't think you'll ever see this large gathering of a bunch of rifles. And everybody that brought their rifles in, thank you so much. You know, it's great to see this many rifles here. Get some pictures of them. And thank you very much for coming. We do appreciate it. And also, while we got you here, now I want to talk about the Historical Society.
Absolutely.
I want to talk to you about the Historical Society. The Historical Society is located up on Main Street. Our membership is $15 a year, and we can always use members. Scott puts out a newsletter called the Jim Hinker. It has a lot of amazing stories, and you get access to see some of the older Jim Hinkers out there. This one talks about, what's you got here?
That's the post office, Germano, yeah.
Post office in Germano.
Some other things, yeah.
Yeah, he has some amazing stories in here. Amazing stories.
That's
Always has something on different patents that were done in there. We meet as often as we can quarterly.
try to, yeah.
Yeah, we meet quarterly.
We put on cemetery tour.
Is
every year.
How many here, I see a show of hands, did you go see any of the cemetery tour this year?
Just in general, yeah. Most of you guys have been to see a cemetery tour.
Thank you. Scott does an amazing job of putting on the cemetery tour. Did you say we were going to have one next year?
I always say no, and Sandy always schedules.
He always says no.
What's that?
Always says no.
Oh, Sandy says we're going to Beach Springs.
Beach Springs, that's a
If
good
you
one.
thought some of the cemeteries we did was dark, wait till you get to Beach Springs. It's real dark out.
But please take time, consider maybe joining the Historical Society. You know, we do have positions for officers and trustees. But, you know, it helps support a lot of the effort here in preserving a lot of we have a huge collection of stuff up at this Historical Society. And someday we'd like to get it open. Right now we don't have the personnel to be able to do that, but it's amazing a lot of the things that we do have up here. But if you're interested, we appreciate the support. Grab a Jim Hager on the way out. $15.
$15. We're going to digitize them and put them up in the digital shoebox eventually. We do not have a website. It was selling auto parts out of China last time I checked, so somebody stole it. Jim, I want to thank you for putting it on. It's an interesting subject, and as a historian, I can tell you, you will never see this many local guns in one spot. Do you agree? You're in the Ohio gun maker. I mean, it's incredible. 2 of these guns have been in the family since they were made, so that is a remarkable thing. So we've got one Moe's right?
Yep.
And that's a hard gun. Charlie brought that, and then we got another one out of Deersville, a Johnson from Deersville. So, Kevin, stand up, Kevin. Kevin is your resident expert on Agers. He's over there in the corner. He will be more than happy to talk to you. So we got 3 writers of Joel Johnson, 4 LL Johnsons, 1 Moses Wright, and 14 Agers. And that's, you know, I've got a writer, I've got an Ager. I should have brought them, I guess, then we could have been over 25. And then the Historical Society's got a writer as well. So, thank you for coming. We appreciate it. If you have any questions, now is the time.
Take some time to hang around.
There are some guys that know a lot more about guns than Jim and I here. I'm not a gun man, but yes, sir.
Everybody finish up the food.
Oh, yeah.
Finish up the food. We got take-home boxes, so.
Yeah, please go get food and desserts, and let's get it eaten. We already paid for it.
I just wondered if they made their own powder on site.
Oh,
I'm so sorry.
the question is, did they make their own powder?
Powder.
Yeah.
Can you answer that?
It would have been tough.
I wouldn't want to make it.
I like my fingers.
Yeah.
Does this one work? No.
Okay, so please take a look at all the guns, and you can see some brighter stuff here. And enjoy.
Oh, I'm not a black powder man. You already looked at it? I remember Randy washing it in the bathtub.
Get out here, make it one more.
Right into the bathtub.
Are you ready?
Oh, yeah.
Do you fill that out?
Yes, and we have the cash So, like, I love history. We've actually, we live down by Chapel Lane, and we actually have a bunch of stuff in our family that just would have gone to waste, but I love that kind of stuff. And we actually, we actually have the doctor that lived on the front, and and it has a lot of different names. So, yeah, I have that
Probably I have a chance to get
Stevie said he's fun. We found it everywhere.
Kevin, you'd like to give us a tour of your rifles?
To pour that out.
Yeah. Amazing. Get our hands out of there.
What is, I was watching you with this. What is it?
Oh, we're putting this live on Facebook.
Oh, great.
It's a little more local.
You? Huh? You? No. I mean, I like it, but I don't.
Oh, excuse me, they're chasing me.
Yeah, I don't have any of those.
Just something to think
Oh, was it? It was 250.
Hey, you make sure you send me a clip of all that.
It'll be online.
The smallest one I got. This is 27. 27.
And it'll also be on our Facebook. It'll be on our Facebook and also on our YouTube channel.
Yes, because, like we said, they used shoot. So this was cut off.
So it just came up.
Usually it should be out here. It's all double.
You just set the one and you set the one.
Yeah, just for
Oh, yes. Something like the food before she killed it. Hey, Rick. How we doing?
What's going on, Mike? How you doing, buddy? Good to see you.